In this video I'm going to introduce you to the urban calculus, a playable systems model of urban conflict at the strategic and political military level. A second video will take you through how to play the game, and a third video will introduce an alternative way of playing part of the urban calculus using capability cards. In this video I'll refer to the urban calculus simply as Tuck. Tuck is a very abstract game. Indeed, I'm almost loath to call it a game and prefer the term playable systems model. You play Tuck in order to understand and explore the model, and to think about how it relates to happenings in real-world urban conflicts, rather than just to win the game. Tuck is designed for two sides, the attacker and the defender. You can play it solo, playing both sides, or with one or two people on each side. I find that having two people per side encourages more discussion about what is going on. So, let's start with the game board. The game board shows the systems model that we're going to be using. Each box on the model is linked to one or more other boxes, and the number in a circle on the line joining two boxes is the number you need to equal or exceed in order for whatever the action is that links the two boxes to succeed. Here we come to a significant feature of Tuck. It is not played with dice. Instead, Tuck uses a deck of playing cards, either one or two decks per side. At the start of the game, remove the jokers and all the picture cards, so you're just left with the numbers 1 to 10, essentially a D10. The deck or decks is reshuffled at the end of each turn, or whenever you get to the end of the deck. Whenever you need to make a test against a target number, just deal the next card from the deck. If it equals or exceeds the target number, the test has succeeded. It's as simple as that. And this is the core mechanic that drives Tuck. With the basic mechanics sorted, let's look at the board in more detail. The large area in the centre of the board is the urban battleground. This could represent one big city or an aggregation of different urban areas. It all depends on the scenario. The areas on the grid do not correspond to the areas of a city. Across the top of the battleground are the spaces where the attacker's forces are initially placed and returned to at the end of each turn. They represent infantry heavy units, armour heavy units and fires, which includes artillery, rockets and air support. Note that it is assumed that units will generally be combined arms. It is just a question of whether they are biased more to infantry or armour. Infantry heavy units will be good at wheedling enemy infantry out, typically less good at fighting enemy armour, and are likely to suffer higher casualties themselves. Armour heavy units will be good at destroying buildings with enemy infantry in them, good at taking on enemy armour and will suffer fewer casualties themselves, but all their actions are likely to cause more collateral damage. Fires are assumed to operate from outside of the city, so they cannot be targeted by enemy infantry and armour heavy units, only by counter-battery fire from the enemy's own fires units. But they will cause significant collateral damage when firing on infantry and armour in the city. The defender has their boxes for the same three types of units down the left-hand side of the battleground. As you'll see in the second video, units fight by being placed at the intersections of the columns and rows. Note also that the battleground has a box labelled rubble. As more structural damage is created from the fighting, this can add rubble counters to this box to a maximum of 2. Each counter means that the tactical defender gets a +1 to each card they play in defence, so it becomes harder to kill the enemy as the fight continues on. Around the battleground are the immediate impacts of the fighting, with boxes for military casualties, for civilian casualties and civilian harm, and for structural damage. Above the battleground, each side has a box for strategic capability. This represents DIME-type activities, diplomatic, informational including cyber, military, primarily strategic fires, and economic, which each side might be pursuing outside of the battleground, the so-called deep fight, in order to achieve their war aims. These activities can have an effect on almost every box on the board. A key part of Tuck is understanding the reverberating effects that the urban battle has. So once the direct impacts of a combat and strategic actions have been calculated, their impact on the other key metrics is assessed. So for instance, casualties might have an impact on societal support, which may in turn have an impact on government will. Or civilian harm and widespread structural damage might adversely affect global opinion about you, and that might in turn affect government will. Finally, structural damage is likely to impact the longer-term livelihoods of the city's inhabitants, and in a more enlightened world, this might again add to adverse global opinion. So that's a tour of the board, and hopefully you're beginning to get an idea of how Tuck might play. As mentioned, a key part of Tuck is that it's about the model, not about winning. And although I produce scenarios which set up the numbers on the board to reflect my view of particular types or even instances of conflict, a great part of Tuck learning can be to get players to discuss these numbers, perhaps after first playthrough as is, and get them to agree on what they see as the right values for a second playthrough. And just because the board shows a linkage or even a capability, that doesn't mean that it will be present in every scenario. That's it for this introductory video. Now please click on the How to Play Tuck video link and learn how to play the game.